Hi, everybody, and welcome to the Maria Gonçalves podcast. And today I have a very special guest and dear friend, and it is a Jeannie Lynch, an energy healer and teacher. And we actually met a few years ago on Clubhouse, and we have stayed connected ever since. I feel like I've talked to you almost every single month since
Good.
then or more.
Not to mention how much we follow each other on all our platforms, but that's
Absolutely.
yeah, it's all
So,
good.
Jeannie, would you like to tell our viewers a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm so happy to be here. And as we were saying offline, so happy to be on the other side of the mic. So you have been featured on my channel so many times, and I just love you so much because of, I think we share that value of what our message is. So I am so excited to be featured on your channel and to work a little bit more together. So today, I was interested in talking today to you, and especially this time of the year, because usually I do a whole post or a whole focus on the holidays aren't so unicorny and no, for
Yes.
happy times for everybody, because there's so many people out there that have had loss right around the holidays. And what are the holidays, not to mention just the stress, right, from trying to get it all done and all the holiday parties and the rest of it. But I wanted to bring attention to grief around the holidays. And when I said that to you and we were talking about that being a great topic, you felt the same way. And we both do the same work as far as working with people who would like to make a connection to spirits through the other side. And there's that whole beautiful connection and woo woo side of our work. But today, I really wanted to have a heartfelt conversation about the person out there who's facing the holidays and just wants to be real. Like, let's peel
Absolutely.
it back and talk about the other side, which is we're going to put a smile on our face and we're going to attempt to get through it. But underneath, there's a lot more going on. So I wanted to talk about that today on your platform.
Absolutely. When we were collaborating for the topic today, and we both felt the same way, especially with the holidays and grief, because a lot of people think you're walking around with a smile and everybody's happy. And it's like, not everybody's happy. Many people are struggling this month, especially this month with grief. So I'm so grateful you are here. And I wanted to share your story of grief around the holidays. So if you could share with our viewers
Yeah.
your story.
Got it. Thank you. So I have to kind of go back to my story, and I'm going to say the number of years. It was almost 20 years ago. And people can hear that and go, 20 years ago. Well, she's well beyond her journey, right? But the journey never ends, right? So it doesn't matter if you're 2 weeks out or you're approaching it because someone that you love dearly is maybe on their deathbed, right? We'll have to go there during this conversation. Or it happened 40 years ago. Love is love and love lives on. So guess what? It's always there. So my journey started, actually, I'm going to go back because the point I want to make is 2 weeks before my daughter was killed in a car crash on January 20th. Bad snowstorm up in Vermont. She got into a car with her grandmother. Her grandmother was driving her to school. They both passed away. My life changed forever. But it's interesting, 2 weeks before that, I had taken, I'm rolling my eyes because you're going to laugh when I tell you this. I had taken a happy class, little pause there, right? I took a happy class for my business, for my corporate job, and we were trying to teach and mentor people to be happy in their jobs. Well, this timeliness of this class was so perfect because it was so much of the foundation and uncovering how you are as a person and how you're wired. So I have to tell you before we start this grief journey together today, I'm wired happy. I mean, I tend to kind of be able to problem solve pretty quick. I've been through some shit in my life and I can get through it. I've always been a survivor, all these things that, because of my childhood and trauma or whatever reason, because of choices that I made, not all good, I learned how to kind of get through things pretty quick. So I learned early before my daughter passed that I was wired happy. And for the people who feel that they're wired that way, that doesn't mean that the grief journey is any easier. In fact, it can actually be a little bit more difficult because people assume you're fine. you've been through worse, or you can get through anything, and you're so strong, and, and put a smile on your face. And let me tell you, this persona, as we were talking before we started, there's this outward appearance that, you have to put the ring lights on and your makeup on, and you have to look all good today, right? But inside, what's happening? So I want to share with your audience today the most amazing statistics that I think if people hear, it'll change their life. Are you ready for it?
Yes, yes.
Okay, let's do it. Had to get your permission to share it. The truth is, there was this book that was handed out at this little seminar, and I'll share the name of it. It's How We Choose to Be Happy. And you can leave the writers and the names in your show notes. But at this seminar, they were talking about happy people versus miserable people. And so to do this study, they went out and they found as many miserable people as they could. And they asked them all these questions like, who are you? Where do you live? How much money do your parents make? Economics, everything, what had happened as a child, everything. And they did this whole study, and they took all the data from these miserable people who, by the way, they deemed themselves as miserable. It wasn't like someone else said they were miserable. They came into the study going, oh yeah, I'm just miserable. Okay. And they got all these answers, and they had the data, and they called them the control group. And then they went out to people like you and to me, and they said, hey, happy people, we want to ask you questions too. And of course, they lined up, right? They were not deemed happy, but they said, I'm happy. And so they asked them the same questions. Who are you? Where are you? What do you do? And, and so on. And what they found out is going to blow your mind. They actually found out that the happy people had had more adversity. I'm getting covered with goosebumps telling you this, by the way.
Mhm.
So whenever that happens, as you know, I feel like someone's raining on me. This is for so many people out there who are listening, right? So they
Absolutely.
found out, covered with goosebumps, keep going, Jean. They found out that all these happy people had been through more trouble and more adversity and more heartache, more sorrow, more loss, more poverty, more than, and the miserable people, not that they hadn't had things happen, okay, but nothing compared to the happy people. So then they dove a little bit deeper in this study, and they said, what's the difference between these people and these people? And here it is. The people who were happy woke up every day, and I'm going to cry telling you this, with the intention of being happy. Just they got into the shower every day, and they thought about what happiness meant. And they had an idea of what they needed to be. And I'm not chasing a dream here. I'm talking about the simplicity of what happiness is, like experiencing love and not heartache and not sorrow. And, just they had an intention, and they wanted to be. So back to my original point, I'm wired happy. So in a sense, going through grief, it was like, I just want to be able to get through this with as much grace as I can. And for those of you who think it was easy, I'm telling you, I was on my knees when this happened. I did not have a great experience with grief. It was on my knees, throwing up, hanging over the toilet, post-traumatic stress syndrome flying out of my body, major therapy, complicated post-traumatic stress from pulling my daughter off life support. I mean, I don't remember the first couple years. I remember kind of being in my life, but not being of my life, a little different than I am today. And I knew in that moment, Maria, that if I was going to want to help others, that I couldn't just kind of skim the surface of it and read the cliff notes, that I had to really dive in and experience it. So when I'm working with people today, the ones who show up that are in that place, the desire and the need and the desperation, I guess, to kind of get back to some semblance of life, who are really touching their grief, I will tell you, they have a higher probability of getting through this because they're willing to feel it. And if you can't feel grief and experience it, you're probably not going to fare well. And I'm not projecting that on anybody, because I could talk all day about this topic. Can you tell? So another aspect of that, and again, I know I'm rambling, but I think it will get to our next part of this conversation, is, can you experience love? Think about what love is. And can you experience grief at the exact same time? So I'm going to ask your audience that if you're listening to the show today, is this an emotion that comes and goes? Is this something you wake up every day and experience if you're going through loss? Oh, it feels like love, feels like grief. Do you think you vacillate back and forth from those two extremes? It's my understanding of working with thousands of people in the last 20 years. It's one or the other. You cannot experience grief and love at the same time. But if I said to you, think about what love feels like, it feels a certain way. And then I said, think about what grief feels like, it feels a certain way. They're two different feelings. So you never can really mix those. It's a choice, back to that choice. So I'm one of these strange people that believe you don't get to be happy, that you have to choose to be happy. And I do believe that happiness is a skill you can learn. Here we
Oh, that
go.
was interesting. So this just popped into my head randomly. I was in a Facebook group and a mom wrote this comment, which I thought was so powerful. And it was her son had passed away. This was years ago, so I'm just trying to remember what she wrote. It touched my heart because I never thought of this. No one says their name anymore. She goes,
Oh,
just say their name. And then people wrote underneath, we're just so scared of how you're going to react. So how do you feel with it? Because that just came to me, and
oh,
especially now in the holidays, like, do people tiptoe around you or do they say her name? And
but
another
you,
thing, I
yeah.
want to hear about her. Like,
Oh,
share
yeah.
with us the story
Love to
about
share.
her.
Yeah, she was amazing.
What was her
You're
name?
trying to make me cry, right? That's okay. I'm very comfortable with my tears. I will tell you out of the gate, if I do tear up, it's not for me. Again, my own journey, everybody's journey is so different. For mine, when I think about my daughter, I light up like a tree and I light up because of the love. And so I get a little weepy thinking of how much I love her and I don't feel separate from her. So people say to me, "Oh, how is your grief journey?" And that's a great question to ask people, by the way, especially around the holidays. So, hey, holidays are coming. How are you doing with your grief? I mean, be specific, right? And then you
Hmm.
mentioned using their name. I'll have to give a true story. I'm down here meeting Michael's family, right? So we moved down to Florida and his whole family's down here. And we were at a Christmas party and someone turns around and says, "So tell me, do you have any children?" And I see the sister in the back, like trying to go, "Stop, don't, geez, don't ask," like she asked the wrong question because she didn't know better. And I remembered feeling like, well, wait a minute. Yeah. Thank you for asking. I love it when people ask me that question. And this is a great thing for people who are listening. I always say yes. I don't say I used to or yes, I do. I answer that as honestly as I can, which is, "Oh my God, thank you so much for asking." Actually, yes, I have a beautiful daughter, Isla. And unfortunately, Isla passed away when she was 8, and she's still very much with me, but I love talking about her. So thank you for letting me share that. It sounds scripted, but I'm telling you, you can't get any more real than that is the truth. People who ask me questions about my grief and about my journey and kind of keep her alive in that way and let me share, those are the ones I feel the closest to. I told my family when I started this journey, if you want to honor my daughter, forget about me. Just honor my daughter. Remember
Yeah.
her death date, call me. Remember her birth date, call me. I want the call. And in fact, if you don't, as my family, I said, "I'm going to be pretty upset because what you're saying is you don't remember her." And that's something I can't settle with, right? So
Mhm.
for somebody who's out there who's listening, it's your choice and everybody's different. My girlfriend lost a child almost mirrored me, same road, a year later. Okay. And she couldn't go there. So when people asked, this is her choice, and I'm not judging her by saying this, she just went, "It's easier for me not to go there." It was too hard for her to go there. So her journey was about saying to people, I have one girl at home, but she never mentioned the other one. And it was for her. She was doing that for self perseverance for herself. So again, I'm not telling everybody what to do. I'm telling them that they need to find their own way to honor that and lean in, right? So hopefully you've
Mm.
heard that, not try to escape grief because it will find you. So my daughter, you wanted to know about my daughter. It's a little hard to tell you anything more than she still believed in Santa. She was a
Oh,
little sarcastic. I think you've pulled my daughter through before and
yes,
brought
I
my
have.
daughter through. And I remember knowing it was her because she was rolling her eyes, going, Mom, you know what I mean? Like when I see my daughter, I don't see angels and halos. I see sarcasm. I see attitude. I see, kind of insecure in the sense that an 8-year-old would be, but I also see all that other stuff. I remember the gift, her last gift. She died right around January. And I remember my last Christmas. I have all their Christmas decorations. They're in a special box. I don't pull them out because I don't want to mesh them with other stuff. Like
Mhm.
I just haven't. And that's just my choice. And again, other people who are still in that same family and stuff, pull them out and put them up. She actually had her own business, was making Christmas decorations. So you can imagine how many Christmas decorations I have that my daughter made. Everyone got them the
Oh,
first year, but she had her own business. She's a little entrepreneur. So
Jeannie,
that's, yeah,
she's like her mom, an
yeah,
entrepreneur. I love it.
she really was. Yes. So,
Oh, that was beautiful. I actually got teary-eyed when you were talking about her because I could feel the love you had for her.
mm,
And I am so grateful for this conversation that's so vulnerable as you share like your journey, but also your friend's journey. You're like, well, this is how she handles it. So I think it's important for people to remember to take cues from the parents, what is okay for them, what is not. But I love that permission to say their name
yeah,
because I know that's a big one. And people tippy toe around that because we don't want to upset the parents because we love them so much
yeah,
and we don't want to make them relive that painful moment, but it was their child. And I
yeah.
love how you shared that with us because that was so beautiful. And I've seen pictures of her because you have shared on your social media. I will be posting all of Jeannie's social media stuff up in the show notes for people to follow her because she is incredible. So now here's a question I hear often within mediumship, within mediums. So I'm just curious. I often hear people say, this child passed away at a young age, and now you go for medium reading, and someone can see them, and now they're 20 or 30. So, how do you see your daughter today? Because she
Oh,
passed away 20 years ago. So, do you still see the little girl, or do you see her grown up? I'm just
I love
curious about
I love that question. In fact, I addressed that question on one of my videos because it's so important. She is everything, right? So I see her at 2. I see her at her last Christmas. I see her as she was when she passed, but I've aged her also. In fact, she came to me in a dream once. It's going to be kind of an interesting answer. And I said to her, How old are you now? So I'm asking her. She knew I was working with people in grief. And so during this dream visit, I was like, oh my God, like I can tap into the real deal here. Tell me, Isla, what was it like when you crossed over? And so one of the questions I had for her was, How old are you now? And she said to me, I'm 11 for you now. Next year I will be 2. I've already chosen that. And I remembered coming out of the dream and journaling it and going, She's 11, which would have made sense because it was like 8, 9, 10, 11, 3 years after, right? So I had this
it.
dream visit 3 years. So she was telling me, I'm 11 now. And then when she said, Next year I will be 2, I've already chosen that. I heard TWO, but what she
Mhm.
was saying is TOO, as in also. And so it was her way of saying to me, I will continue to age with you because that's what you do and that's what you're doing. And so they become, of course, I have her friends from school that are married now and have kids. One of her best friends in school, get this, had a child and named her Isla. So, and Isla is one of her children's guides. So I get to kind of watch what would have happened and as she ages. And so I see all that. So the answer is Isla is all that for me. She is still the 1-year old, the 2-year old, the 7-year old, the 8. She's all that. But then she's all those things she didn't get to be because she ages with me. And kind of like I said in the beginning, I don't feel any separation with her. I still fantasize about that day I get to cross and she's waiting there. I don't know if she's going to be the 8-year-old or the perception of hopefully the 60-year-old that she would be, right? If I get to ages like I'd like to. So I'm open to all of it. My sense is she'll be all that for me and continue. So does that answer that question?
I think that was a great answer because I often hear that within mediumship readings. And I know the mediumship readings I've had when their children have passed away as teens, and they'll come in and they're young, they're 8 and 10, because they want to talk about those Christmases and those special memories. Because as teenagers, it's a little bit more difficult. And then the mom will be like, oh, yeah, I remember that. And it just brings so much joy to their heart. And I was just curious how that was for you.
Actually, can I say one thing too, next to
Yeah,
that question that I think is so important for people that's
absolutely.
about the age is there was a woman once I worked with who came to me and the child was under a year and hadn't learned how to talk yet. So, just cooing and cawing, right? So
Mm.
there's a message for you from your child. She was like, but she can't talk. She had no concept that they still have so much to say. You
They
know what I
do.
mean? Because she was aging her, like literally thinking in the physical form, well, you can't run because she couldn't walk. It really held back that way. And I'm like, no, it's not the way it works. Right. So I'm sure you've worked with people who speak different languages and stuff. I mean, love is a universal language. It is, there's no dialect there. So I thought that was pretty interesting. Okay. Back to the ages. Okay.
That
So you were good.
that is interesting because I've had the question, I would like a mediumship reading, but they only speak this language. Are you able to even connect? And it was like, yeah, because
Yeah.
it's a soul. We're connecting with another soul, right? And
Yeah.
and the English language or the Portuguese language or the whatever language, that's for us. But in the spirit world, it's all universal. They just speak to us however we need it communicated. So we're able to be the voice for those in the spirit world.
Bringing spirit through, talk about the language on the other side. I mean, I've had to go to a dictionary half the time and go, I don't even know what this word is, but because,
Yeah,
and it's not even a word, right? It's an energy and we're trying to interpret it. That's a whole other video.
it is. So then
It
the
is.
next question I have, again, just came to me as we're talking, because I am curious because you are so gifted and you are so intuitive. So am curious, after your daughter passed away, did you go to mediums or did you train to become a medium to be
Yeah.
able to connect, or was it
Yeah.
just spontaneous?
No, not spontaneous. Been like this my whole life. Was afraid, was getting messages before she passed that the time between her and I was short, was in therapy dealing with that. When I went
Mm.
after she passed, I went back to the same therapist and said, now what, because we talked about this, a month ago, right? And he passed me off to an energy healer to work with my gifts, to lean into my intuition and to understand. And the real transformation came from I went to a seminar, like I'm sure many people who are listening go to, right? So that
Mhm.
first year is the best example I can give is you would never drop your child off at daycare without going inside, right? So
Yeah.
finding out who the teachers are and what time lunch is and do they have lunch and here's their school bag, right? I did the same thing when I lacrossed. I was like, where is she? I was brought up Catholic, so my perception of where she was and everything, there was some rerouting I needed to do. And again, I'm not dogging my religion. I just wanted to understand it deeper than I'd listened to at catechism. So I really dove into the study of where they go, what is that process, how do they get there, and all that. Was fascinated by it. And I'd gone to a life after life seminar up at the Omega Institute and trained with Brian Rice, Raymond R. Moody. I mean, I could go on, John Howland. They were all there doing this whole mediumship thing. And my daughter was the first daughter through at
Oh,
one of these events. And it was all about this work that I'm doing today. And it was the information that this person gave me. I could blow your mind. Like, and from doing this work, people who are on the fence about mediumship and the rest of it, spirit comes through to give you what you need. That's it. They know that thing that is keeping you up at night. They know the heartache, they know the sorrow, and their message for you is different than the one they have for daddy. It's different than the one they have for Aunt Jean. It's so specific, right? So this gentleman brought through something that only Isla knew and me, that there was a angst to it,
Mhm.
and healed it instantaneously. I left that seminar that week, that weekend, going, I know what I'm doing. I'm heading home and doing this for others. And I've been that person, like I said, for the last 20 years, hence the reason you and I met, because that work was something I wanted a part of. I wanted to offer that to other people. And I was never afraid of it. And I did study. I'm not saying I didn't. I got a library behind me and classes I can show you receipts
Yes.
for, right? But the study is just doing it and being here with others when they're going through something like this. So,
Absolutely. And that's such an important question because I do have that asked often in mediumship when there is a loss of a child. Where do they go? Are they all by themselves? Did they just go poof? And it's like so important to know they're not alone. They're greeted
yeah,
by family. I've often had grandparents bring in, or a family dog that has crossed over will bring in their child, but the dog will come first. And then it's like, I'm leading, I'm the protector. And it's so cute. And it's just the knowing for someone who has lost a child that they didn't go poof. Their soul
yeah,
lives forever. Can you share with us, where did they go? Where did she go? What
yeah,
was your experience with that? Because that's
yeah.
an important
Oh,
question.
yeah. My belief on that is so certain. Like there's no doubt in my mind where they go. And I know that it's not far away from where we are right now, but just at a very high level of vibration. I know we talked about this earlier. I love this little graph. If you haven't seen it, it's the David Hawkins alpha graph, and it's all about emotions. And grief, by the way, is at the very bottom of this. It's like one of the heaviest and hardest emotions that we can experience in a physical body. And way, way, way up at the top is joy and love and enlightenment, right? So this is just in a physical body, by the way. Okay, so when you enter a body and you have all these different emotions and we can give them a name, it's in this grid. And this is just a visual for your audience. Above that, beyond that, higher than that is where they are. And so they're still in this metaphor that we're showing today, they're still here, but they're above. And you can call that heaven. You can call that nirvana. I mean, you can call that another state. You can call, there's so many names for that beautiful place. Without a physical body, they're in a much better place than we are, and they're not, and they're still learning. They're still free will. They're still connected. They still are doing work. I know that surprises people. Isla's work has changed where she's been. She was helping first in the beginning when she crossed it. She was bringing me people. That's something that medium said when I went to that seminar. He said, your daughter wants you to know she is line leader and she will be lining people up the door for you, other mothers that are like you, that are grieving, and she will bring them to you. That was her job. How cool is that? And it wasn't like I was keeping her from something she, coming back or whatever. She was just assisting in the work that she was doing and that we were doing. So they're there. And I hope I explained it right. I remember asking somebody once, what do you believe? I didn't know how to start a session with somebody, tippy toeing, what's
Yes.
your religion? And, I was nervous about that whole boundary.
Mhm.
And the person looked at me and said, honestly, Jean, crying, I don't know what I believe. And I said, well, strap yourself in. You're about to find out. And isn't that it? So your understanding of where they are and my understanding comes from experience. And it's also making choices along the way that resonates with me. Someday someone said, oh, come on, you're dead, you die, you're dust, right? Get on the road. There's nothing after this. And I thought, I got to think about that for a second. I thought about it and I was terrified. I just,
Mm.
I got on that other way of thinking, like, that's it. That's it. Like, it's over, and all of a sudden I could feel my heart going, and I just didn't honor me in any way. And I quickly got off the road. You navigate your grief and you lean into what makes and rings true to you. The whole idea of becoming awake. Isla, you're going to think this is beautiful, right? I lost another child years earlier. And when I lost Isla in therapy and in hypnosis and in, my post traumatic stress trauma stuff, she brought me David. I had never processed the loss of my son ever. And yet there was Isla standing with David saying, "Oh, before you go to me, why don't we start here, mommy?" And she was pushing this little boy in front of me saying, "Let's go back before we go forward." And that's love, right?
That is powerful. Can you share a little bit about David?
Yeah, David was inside me, and I was on my way to one of the last few appointments, and I didn't feel pregnant the night before. I remember saying to one of my sisters, I just didn't feel tight. I didn't feel full. My breast and my belly had kind of transitioned a little bit. And I just need to get to the doctors and hear the heartbeat. And of course, you know how that story goes. So when I got
Mhm.
to the last appointment, it was what ended up being the last appointment. It was, there's no heartbeat. Let's dig a little bit deeper. Let's find out more. And then it was, I'm sorry, your child has already passed. You can go home. You can wait for the child to pass. Or, and of course, my sister, who's always been the sister that's right there for me, said, "We're not leaving. Like, you're scheduling an appointment and we're going to do this through inducing and the rest of it." So came back the next day to the hospital and was able to be induced and had to deliver this child and have a funeral. And they're buried in the same graveyard. I go left for David and right for Isla. I could go into another whole story that I think would be too much for your audience. So you let me know if you want me to share that.
You can share whatever you want, Jeannie. This is your time to share your journey
Yeah.
about a mom who's lost two children in two different ways,
Yeah.
both lives just as important
Yeah. I
because they're
think this
both
would be
important.
Yeah, I think this might open a door to a belief, as we talked about. You got to choose what
Yes.
you believe. And it might really help somebody who's maybe had three miscarriages and, they're trying to get pregnant and they can't, and they've been through more than one loss. The first time a medium stepped up for me, I wasn't looking or training or asking. It was somebody who actually walked into the bank. I told her what happened, and she says, "I was researching online while I was working, trying to find a medium in the area." And this woman walked through the door who was okay. Prayers are being answered. And started crying, and I told her a little bit. And she says, she says, "With permission, which you should always ask, with permission, can I connect to your daughter and maybe give her a message right here in the bank? I would love to offer that for you." And in the first experience I had with a medium, and I didn't know what to say, but I said yes, right? I was like,
Mhm.
sure. Like, where's this going? Terrified. And she closed her eyes. And now that you know the story, this is what she said to me. She says, "Your daughter is standing here with me, and she wants you to know that she loves you so much. She loves you so much. She actually chose you twice. She wants you to know that years ago, she came to you and she purposely left you early to awaken you and to open you to the possibility of wanting children. And when that was accomplished, she left and she walked by your side." And she says, "And I'm hearing for years, 10, 12 years, she walked by your side, waiting until you were ready to bring her through the second time, where she was your daughter, and this is the same daughter. So just know that the love was there." And again, she walked with me for another year. So I had lost this first child
Mm.
out of marriage, but then David passed. And then she walked with me for another 11 years until she came through the second time. And I'll tell you, I never knew how much I wanted children until I lost David.
Mm.
Right. So all that understanding was, and the feeling like she chose me twice. So my belief and understanding, and it doesn't happen all the time. Maybe you could say something about that. Have you ever had that experience where a child has chose somebody twice? Have you ever seen that in your
I
mediumship?
personally, no, but I think it's so important to validate that you're sharing your experiences, and I don't think anybody should judge.
Yeah.
I think too, the thing that spirit does is they bring through people that you can help for paths that you have walked.
Mhm.
And
Oh,
you've walked a lot of grief as a mom, losing two children in different ways. So I
yeah.
can see how spirit brings those moms that you help with their grief, which is so powerful. And who knows, maybe after this interview, I may be having those experiences. I don't know, because you've shared that story,
Yeah. Good point. Good point.
right?
I like
And you're
that. Yeah.
having the
Because
experience.
I've seen it, and I'll ask, is this the same child that in my sessions, and I know the energy of it? What we know here, we're so caught up in our bodies, right? We're so caught
Yeah.
up in, well, if I want to go there, I got to get in my car and get there. We're not
Mhm.
really aware of how the subconscious works and how spirit works and stuff. And there's so much more to the other side than there ever is here. So I do want to say too that the number one question I get asked, and I want to just let people know who are listening, you don't ever have to ask this question. The first question I always get asked is, are they okay? It's almost like, oh man, if you had three wishes, you just wasted a wish. They're okay. I have never met a spirit on the other side that came through and said, help. I'm not in a good place or get me out of here. There's just, I don't know how to say that with more passion to
Yeah.
say they are so okay. They're okay. All they want us to know is that they're okay. And all
Yes.
they're concerned about is, are we okay? Are we okay? And we asked for the experience, right? To physically feel this, right? Love and fear again, right there. So,
That is so powerful. So, one of the questions we had is, what do I do now with my life after my child has passed? Because I think that's so important to address. And you have the lived experience, if you could share.
yeah, I'm going to answer that as my daughter answered for me. So, one of the things that I did to heal was I did a soul retrieval. So, this is probably going
Mm.
to be out of the park for most people who are listening, but my experience was this person worked with me to heal some childhood trauma. And we got to the point in my healing. And if I can explain what a soul retrieval is, real quick, for people who are listening, when you go along your life and you're walking your life, and your father leans over and says something really bad to you, like, come on, stupid, or you
Mm.
could have done better, but you're a dumb, or there's heartache or sorrow or anything, right? A little piece of our soul in that moment is supposedly breaks off, and it stays in that moment of trauma or negativity or heartache, right? And so as we walk our journey, a little piece of us keeps breaking off. And then pretty soon, as we finish our journey, unless we go back and really heal these events, we end up a little holy. And I don't mean holy in the sense of holier, right? Just, but
Mhm.
with holes. And so this gentleman was going back in my childhood, and it was picking up those pieces. And I got so far along in my journey. In fact, I got to the part where Isla came to me, my daughter, and in my meditation or whatever, hypnosis, whatever it was, I saw her come to me, and I thought, I woke right up. I was like, I can't do it. Like, don't make me go there. Like, it was too much for me. And he looked at me and he says, okay, Jean, we did a lot of work today. You saw a lot. We healed a lot. Let's stop. You let me know someday when you're ready to go and continue the journey. 2 years later, on my daughter's birthday, which would have been her birthday, I celebrate it. I called that guy back and I said, hey, you told me when I'm ready, I'm ready. And he came back over. We got back into that place of beautiful meditation and music playing and the rest of it. And I picked up where we left off, right? When she came to
Mm.
me, we went through the journey. And guess what? Oh, I'm going to cry on this one. We ended up getting to the day that I took her off life support. Okay. So now I
Mm.
have to go back to that day. And the question is, what do they want us to do? How do we move on? You're asking that question, and I'm going to answer that. So when I was in my soul retrieval and I was at the day that I had to take my daughter off life support, I had some regrets that I never realized until I did this journey. And the regret was that I asked my whole entire family to be in the room with me and that we all walked. She donated her organs. So we did the walk,
Mm.
the walk where they go to take them and the rest of it. And we all went into the room and I was saying goodbye. And I knew I had to sing her song, and I sang her beautiful lullaby. And it was this beautiful thing, and I didn't want to go through it alone. So I wanted the audience there to do it with me and the rest of it. Okay. So that's what happened. But in my soul retrieval, I didn't want anyone in the room. I
Mm.
wanted to climb in bed with her. I wanted to just be her and I, including her daddy out. You know what I mean? I didn't want to share her with the world. You know what I mean? I just wanted that time to tell her how much I loved her. And I wanted to say goodbye as a mother would when they came in. I wanted to say goodbye. And so in my soul retrieval, I did that. And I was saying goodbye to her in the way I wanted to. And that little girl, in her sarcastic way, reached up and she took both her hands. And I said to her, I'm remembering, I said, "What am I going to do now?" I said, "You're my ace in the hole. I'm wired happy, Isla, and I've been happy my whole life. But what no one knows is it's you, that you're the reason I'm happy. And now you're gone. So now what? It's a facade, you know what I mean? Or it's a persona, and it's not true because you're gone and it's been you. So now what?" And so I'm looking at her saying this like she knew the secret, right? Like she was the reason I was happy. She took her little sarcastic hands. She put them up on my face and she says, "Oh, mommy, when are you going to realize that your whole entire life, what you've been afraid to do is live? You've been so afraid of this moment. In fact, you've been surrounded by death your whole life because there's so much more loss we haven't talked about. Lots of old boyfriends, 10 to be exact, had died, and so I had this like arsenal of loss behind me. And I was so afraid that everything I love, I lose. Why? Because my life stamped that, just loss, loss, loss. She goes, "Your whole life, mommy, you've been afraid to live. And here's the moment that you've dreaded your whole life and you're living it. What I want you to do is live." And she looked at me and she said, "Live, mommy, live." And as sarcastic as she was, I understood it. And just in that moment, I'm back with this gentleman having this soul retrieval. And I'm like healed. I'm like, oh my God, I've got one thing I got to do. And it's the opposite of what I'm afraid of, like death. Death is not the end. This is just one thing we know about the death card, right, Maria?
Yes,
Right? When
yes.
one thing ends, another begins. And the most feared card in tarot, right, is the death card. And what do we know? It's actually the best card in the deck, right? It's all about transformation. It's all about beginnings. It's all about, and there it was in that moment, that understanding of that energy. And so for me, my life shifts. She's still my ace in the hole, but I live my life in total respect and honor for the life that she was for me. And I want her to look down, in a metaphor, right? Because I'm just really looking over or looking with, right? I
Mhm.
want her to look and go, I want her to do what I would want her to do. If I had been the one in the car that crashed that day, would I want my little girl going through the 20 years of her life just head down? I lost my mommy and it was the worst thing that ever been to me. And look at how sad my life is because of it. No. Wow. That was a lot.
Are you okay? Do you need a
I
moment?
am. I love experiencing it. And thank you, because it was just remembering. And I think I said in the beginning of this, I'm talking so much. You're seeing the tears, but you're seeing the love. You're not seeing grief, I hope, because I don't feel grief. And if I'm portraying grief on this podcast today, this is not what grief looks like. This is what love looks like for my daughter. And I just am so grateful that we had that experience. So grateful for all of it.
I want to say thank you so much, Jeannie, for spending the time with me today to do this interview and for allowing us to see that side of your story and for you to be so vulnerable, because I know that's hard. That's hard for all of us because we need to be happy and we have our happy face. I have a happy face too. We all have our happy face. But then to share that to help others as we come to the end of our session, I do want to let those that are listening, if you do need help with grief and loss, please go see Jeannie. She has walked the path from her own experience. And I always feel the best people to help people are the people that walk the path.
I'll invite people who are grieving. I'm not sure if you saw this. I used AI to bring my daughter to life. I don't know if you saw that one.
I saw that. She looks so
And
beautiful.
so I'd never seen her with such straight teeth. Okay. But that's just a funny joke, right? So I took my daughter's image and I thought about all the things she's told me in the last 20 years. And I literally channeled the interview. You know what I mean? It was like, what do you want people to know, Isla? And I think it took like 7 minutes on the computer. Just my hands were out of control. And I did the voice for it, and it's her. And she came to life and she told this story about what it's like to be on the other side and gave a message. And that is on my YouTube channel. I have a whole channel that's just marked grief for people who are grieving. And it's a little, what's the word? It's a little odd to watch because it's spirit talking and it looks like my daughter communicating. And it is, by the way. And my man came home and he's like, how did you do this? Like, what was that like for you to do and see? And I thought, oh my gosh, the whole time I did that video, I just was filled with just love and joy. And I wanted people to see what spirit would say. And it is. And so I invite people, it's a little trippy, I'm not going to lie, but what was your experience when you watched it? And I'd say people could head there and they would get a message right from my daughter.
When I watched it, I thought it was interesting because we were talking about AI and you're like, I think I could do this. I'm like, really? Because I'm so not techie. So I was just waiting to watch to see what you could do because I'm like, I have no idea how this whole AI stuff works. And you were like, I'm going to figure this out. And you did. Yeah. And I thought that was so cool with her image. And it was her voice too, right?
Yeah, actually, I just used a child's voice.
Oh,
so
okay.
You wouldn't know her voice, but it was as close to her voice as I could get. And her message, though, is everything we kind of talked about today.
Yes.
And it is a message not just for me, for my daughter. It is a message to anyone who is grieving out there because it is straight from spirit who has experienced the other side.
I thought it was absolutely beautiful what you did. I love it. And I love following you on social media and watching your healing journey. And as you share all these other healers and intuitives from around the world and the different experiences you have. And I love learning from you. That's what I love about the collaboration and meeting you. It's like, oh, I never even thought of that. And now after this, I'm like, oh, I'm going to go check out a soul retrieval. I've never had that experience. So I'm like, oh, that's very powerful and healing. Yeah. So I'm so grateful for you today. And I want to thank our listeners for listening in. And don't forget to check out Jeannie's stuff. And I will have it in the show notes for everybody, unless you want to say it out loud. If you remember.
No need. The Intuitive Mindset, Jeannie Lynch on YouTube. It's that simple.
Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody for joining us today. Thank you, Jeannie.
Love you. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye now.
Bye.